day that I thought would never happen has finally arrived. Wildcat at Hershey Park has been given the RMC treatment, and it is now finally open to the public. Season pass holders were given the first rides between May 29th and 31st. As of June 2nd, Wildcat's Revenge is now open to everybody. For all who have already ridden the ride, I think it's safe to say that we're all very surprised just how good this ride is. Honestly, I was expecting this to be a mid-tier RMC at best. I knew it was going to be a good ride, but I was not expecting it to be this good. If you haven't ridden Wildcat's Revenge yet, I highly recommend you come to Hershey Park as soon as you can and ride this ride. For today's video, I'm going to do an in-depth analysis of the ride and kind of give my review of each element on the ride. So let's take a closer look at this vengeful kitty cat.
Into the black hole. Sing for my soul.
Starting off with some general stats of the ride. The ride has a max height of 140 feet, max speed of 62 miles per hour, with an 82-degree first drop. 4 inversions, 3,510 feet of track, with a ride duration of 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Also breaking the world record for the world's largest underflip. Wildcat's Revenge has 3 custom-made trains with 3 different colors: silver, black, and charcoal. Each train can hold up to 24 passengers. Wildcat's Revenge is also opening on the 100-year anniversary of the original Wildcat that opened back in 1923. This was the very first coaster ever for Hershey Park. It would have been cool if they opened Wildcat's Revenge on June 16th, because that's the date that the original Wildcat opened, but I ain't gonna complain that it opened earlier. A few things to know before riding Wildcat's Revenge. It has a minimum height requirement of 48 inches, and just like Candemonium and Skyrush, they do require all bags to go into a locker. Thankfully, these lockers are complimentary, you don't have to pay for them. And they are double-sided lockers, so you place your items in the locker while you're in the queue line, and you retrieve your items on the other side of the lockers as you exit. I haven't tested this theory myself, but apparently you are allowed to bring stuff such as cell phones or keys, as long as your pockets have zippers or Velcro. But on an RMC, I don't take any risks. I put absolutely everything in the locker, and I recommend you do too. When you sit down into the train, fasten your seatbelt, but do not touch that restraint. Wait until the ride operators say that you can pull down on the restraint. If you pull down on your restraint before they tell you to, then they have to pop the restraints on the entire ride, and the entire dispatch is slowed down, and it's all your fault. Act like you've been here before. Now let's go over the ride experience and my overall thoughts of each element. As you exit the station, you go into a wonky triple down, and you get some surprising moments of airtime on this. Nothing too strong, but especially in the back row, that first hill down, I was very surprised how much airtime there was on that. Make a right turn and then approach the lift hill. Climb 140 feet and dive down the first drop. And of course, the first drop was going to be the best in the back row. This first drop was about what I expected it to be. Even though it ain't the tallest RMC, it was still pretty good, and in the back row, it's amazing. After the first drop, we go into the world's largest underflip. You get some crazy lateral ejector on this inversion. You approach it so fast after coming off the first drop. It does slow down a little bit as you crest the top of the inversion. In the back row, you surprisingly get a little bit of hang time on it. The second half of the underflip follows where the original first drop of Wildcat was. And I think it's cool how you can still see parts of the original track and platforms of the first drop of Wildcat. I can't think of any other RMCs that kind of kept the old platforms like that from the original ride. After the underflip is the first airtime hill, and holy shit, this airtime hill is amazing. This airtime hill feels exactly like a Skyrush airtime hill. No matter which row you're in, you're leaving your seat. After the airtime hill, you rise up into a small hill, then sort of level out on an outer bank, just a typical wonky RMC transition. Then you rise up into the first wave turn. The first wave turn is pretty good. It definitely pops better if you're sitting on the right side. After the first wave turn, you go back down and then you rise into the stall. Honestly, I wasn't too excited for this stall just looking at it. I thought it was going to be just okay, and it didn't seem like it was too long of a stall, but I was very surprised how good this stall is. It feels like the train slows down considerably as you're going through the stall, so that kind of maximizes your time being upside down, so you get a fair amount of hang time on this stall. And I'm so happy that Hershey Park finally has hang time in the park. That was one force that they were greatly lacking in before. After the stall, you level out, then take a turn to the right and rise into the second wave turn. And this wave turn hits a lot harder than the first wave turn. And honestly, I think this is one of my favorite wave turns ever. Only second to Iron Gwazi's wave turn. After the second wave turn, you go down, kind of go a little bit to the right, then rise up into an airtime hill. But at the top of this airtime hill, you make a sudden shift to the left, kind of unbanked too. It's kind of jarring, but really forceful. And then go down a second hill, making it a double down. After the double down, you approach the first 0G roll. And this 0G roll was a lot more whippy than I was expecting it to be. At this point in the ride, you're still flying through this layout, and I was thrown to the side of my seat on this 0G roll. After the first 0G roll, you take a turn to the left and kind of do an overbank turn. I say this is probably one of the more slower moments of the ride. Like, it's still a very fast-paced part of the ride, but I feel like this is kind of the slowest moment, at least comparing it to every other element on the ride. Up next is the last inversion, which is a second 0G roll, and I feel like this one hits a little bit harder than the first one. I think you go through it a little bit faster. After the last 0G roll, you do a small bunny hop down, kind of making a turn towards the right, followed by an off-axis airtime hill, then turn a little bit more to the right. And as you approach the final brake run, it kind of does like an outward bank turn. I don't really know how to describe this element. The profiling on it looks so weird, and it looks like they literally hit the autocomplete button to finish the ride. But it definitely makes for a cool finale for the ride, because no matter which row you're in, you're flown out of your seat as you approach the brake run. After the brake run, you take a turn to the right into the unload station. And I like how this ride has a separate load and unload station. I feel like that's going to help with capacity immensely. So my overall thoughts on Wildcat's Revenge. Without a doubt, this is a top tier RMC and a top tier coaster in general. The best way I can describe this ride is the Iron Gwazi of the North. This is the mini version. The pacing on this ride is among the best pacing I've ever felt on any roller coaster. There's not a single dull moment on the ride. No track is wasted on the entire layout, and the ride does not give you a second to breathe. It is one thing after another after another. And it also has an amazing variety of elements too. It's not repetitive unlike some other RMCs that only do airtime hill, airtime hill, airtime hill, and nothing much else. And I wouldn't say that it's either an airtime focused ride nor an inversion focused ride. I don't really feel like the ride really focuses on one specific force or element. It dishes out a well-balanced variety of forces and executing all of those forces perfectly. And honestly, I feel like that's what makes this one of my favorite RMCs ever. While some RMCs like Steel Vengeance and Twisted Timbers are fun and they're good at what they do, they kind of just do the same thing over and over again, those two specifically being more airtime based. The variety of elements on Wildcat's Revenge really makes it stand out among other RMCs. I can't say it's my absolute favorite RMC ever. I still put Iron Gwazi as my favorite RMC and it's my number one overall, but I'd be comfortable putting Wildcat's Revenge maybe at my second or third favorite RMC. Now a big question, is this the best coaster at Hershey Park now? I feel like I can't definitively say that quite yet. I feel like I need a few more rides on Wildcat's Revenge and ride it during different times of day and in different weather conditions too. I just want to see how the coaster runs in different environments. I will say when I was there for media day, I got one morning ride, then later on in the day I got a midday ride, and I could tell a huge difference in that short time span. The ride was running so much faster on my midday ride. I can't imagine how fast this thing will be going at the end of a hot summer day. If visiting Hershey Park wasn't on your plans for this season, I highly recommend that you change that immediately. This ride alone is enough reason to come to Hershey Park this season, along with all the other amazing rides at Hershey Park. With the addition of Wildcat's Revenge, Hershey Park undoubtedly has one of the best, if not the best coaster lineup in the country or possibly the entire world. While it doesn't have the most coasters in the world, the coasters that they do have and the diversity in their lineup really makes this coaster lineup one of the best in the world. All of their coasters being very unique and serving their own unique purpose in the coaster lineup. Even more reason why I am proud to call Hershey Park my home.